Here's a surprising fact. Sleep disruptions caused by frequent nighttime bathroom trips, nocturia, aren't just an inconvenience. They're a metabolic stressor that can ripple through your hormones, your energy regulation, and your aging biology. Sleep is one of the deepest repair processes your body performs each night. During slow wave and REM sleep, your brain consolidates memory, your nervous system recalibrates, your immune system strengthens, and your metabolic hormones, like insulin and cortisol, reset for the next day. Interrupting that process repeatedly with bathroom trips isn't just annoying. It can increase insulin resistance, heighten evening cortisol levels, and blunt the restorative processes that support fat burning, cognitive clarity, and longevity. But here's the part most people miss. The frequency with which you wake up at night to pee is not simply a matter of how much water you drink. It's largely about when and how your body handles fluids in the context of your circadian biology. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your kidneys are sophisticated regulators, not passive sieves. Over the course of the day, your hypothalamus, adrenal glands, and kidneys are continually sensing your hydration status and releasing hormones like antidiuretic hormone, ADH, to conserve water when appropriate. As night falls and your body transitions into restorative sleep, ADH naturally spikes to suppress urine production. That's why most healthy people produce less urine overnight. But when you front-load your fluid intake late in the evening, especially after a day of inconsistent hydration, you overwhelm this circadian rhythm. Your kidneys have too much fluid to process, and your bladder ends up full right in the middle of your deepest sleep cycles. The result? You wake, hormonally primed for rest, with a bladder demanding attention. That interrupts your sleep architecture and sends metabolic signals that increase stress hormones and impair recovery. And that's just the physiological layer. When you add in diuretic triggers like evening caffeine, alcohol, or certain foods, and even blood pooling in your legs that shifts into your circulation when you lie down, the effect multiplies. So the stakes here are real. A simple habit around hydration timing can mean the difference between waking up refreshed or waking up repeatedly, which in turn affects your weight regulation, metabolic flexibility, hormonal balance, stress resilience, and long-term health. In this speech, you're going to learn not just what to do, but why it works, rooted in human physiology and circadian biology. You'll come away with simple, actionable timing strategies for your water intake, strategies that work with, not against, your metabolism. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day. Let's start with the master regulator, the hormone that most people have never heard of, but that quietly determines whether you sleep through the night. It's called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. You may also see it referred to as vasopressin. And this hormone is the reason healthy children can sleep 8 to 10 hours without needing to urinate. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Imagine your kidneys as intelligent water filters connected to a smart thermostat. That thermostat sits in your brain, specifically in the hypothalamus, and it constantly measures your blood concentration. If your blood becomes slightly concentrated, ADH is released. That tells your kidneys, hold on to water, don't let too much go into the urine. Now here's the circadian part. What the research shows is that ADH naturally rises in the evening as part of your sleep preparation biology. Studies in chronobiology demonstrate that nighttime vasopressin secretion increases specifically to reduce urine production during sleep hours. This is a circadian adaptation, an elegant evolutionary design that allows uninterrupted rest. But here's the problem. Modern life disrupts this rhythm. Artificial light at night suppresses melatonin, and melatonin interacts closely with vasopressin regulation. Chronic stress elevates evening cortisol, which interferes with hypothalamic signaling. Late heavy meals increase insulin, which changes kidney sodium handling. Alcohol suppresses ADH directly, which is why you urinate more after drinking. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Your body is trying to dim the lights and enter nighttime conservation mode. But if you keep flipping the switches back on, with screens, stress, food, or alcohol, your hormonal orchestra never transitions into its nocturnal pattern. So ADH doesn't rise properly, the kidneys don't get the memo, and urine production continues at daytime levels. Now layer on top of that a large glass of water at 9:30 or 10 crs p.m. Your kidneys now have excess fluid to process, at a time when hormonal signaling may already be compromised. The result? A full bladder at 2 a.m. This is why simply drinking less water isn't the solution. In fact, chronic mild dehydration during the day can worsen the problem. When you underhydrate in the morning and afternoon, your body compensates later. Thirst increases in the evening, leading to late fluid intake. You create a rebound pattern. So here's the foundational protocol. First, front-load hydration. Consume roughly 60-70% of your daily fluids before 3 p.m. Second, taper fluids gradually after dinner, small sips if needed, not full glasses. Third, dim lights and reduce screen exposure 90 minutes before bed. This supports melatonin, which indirectly supports proper nighttime ADH signaling. Fourth, avoid alcohol within 3 to 4 hours of bedtime. Alcohol inhibits ADH release. This is not anecdotal, it's physiological. And finally, create consistency. Your circadian system thrives on regular sleep and wake times. When bedtime is predictable, hormonal rhythms become predictable. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day, and we explore the biology behind simple daily habits that transform long-term health. Now, we've addressed the hormonal timing piece. But hydration is not just about hormones. It's also about metabolism. Now let's talk about insulin, because this is where nighttime urination becomes a metabolic story, not just a hydration story. Most people think insulin only controls blood sugar. It doesn't. Insulin is also a powerful regulator of sodium handling in the kidneys, and wherever sodium goes, water follows. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When you eat carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises. In response, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's job is to shuttle glucose into cells, but it also signals the kidneys to retain sodium. Now let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine sodium as a sponge inside your bloodstream. When insulin is elevated, that sponge expands. It holds onto sodium and therefore holds onto water. That's why people often feel puffy after a high-carb meal. But here's where it becomes relevant to nighttime urination. If you eat a large carbohydrate-heavy dinner, especially late, insulin rises into the evening hours. Initially, sodium retention increases, but several hours later, as insulin falls and blood glucose fluctuates, the kidneys may respond with a compensatory diuresis, meaning they excrete both sodium and water. In metabolically flexible individuals, this is mild. In insulin-resistant individuals, this can be exaggerated. Research in metabolic physiology shows that insulin resistance alters renal sodium reabsorption and increases nighttime urination frequency. It's one reason nocturia is more common in people with metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. So the issue isn't just water before bed. It's unstable insulin before bed. If your blood sugar rises and falls significantly overnight, you create hormonal ripple effects. Cortisol may increase, adrenaline may rise, and kidney filtration patterns shift. The bladder becomes the messenger. This is why some people wake at 3 a.m., not because of hydration, but because of glycemic instability. So what's the protocol? First, stabilize dinner. Prioritize protein, fiber, and healthy fats in the evening. Think wild salmon, leafy greens, olive oil. Think lentils with vegetables and tahini. Reduce refined starches and sugars at night. Second, consider a metabolic cutoff time. Aim to finish dinner 3 hours before sleep. This allows insulin levels to normalize before your ADH surge begins. Third, walk after dinner. A simple 10-15-minute walk improves glucose disposal, lowers post-meal insulin, and reduces nocturnal blood sugar swings. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day, breaking down physiology into practical tools. Fourth, evaluate your metabolic flexibility. If you consistently wake between 2 or 4 a.m. and struggle to fall back asleep, that may be a sign of nighttime glucose instability. In that case, shifting overall carbohydrate intake earlier in the day can make a dramatic difference. Now here's something empowering. When people improve insulin sensitivity, Through resistance training, intermittent fasting, adequate sleep, and anti-inflammatory nutrition, nighttime urination often improves as a secondary benefit. Because the root cause was metabolic, not urological. We've covered hormonal timing and insulin regulation, but there's another powerful player in this story: cortisol. Now let's talk about cortisol, because this is where nighttime urination becomes a nervous system story. Cortisol follows a circadian rhythm. In healthy physiology, it peaks in the early morning to help you wake up, then gradually declines throughout the day, reaching its lowest point at night. That nighttime dip is essential, because when cortisol is low, melatonin rises. When melatonin rises, ADH rises. When ADH rises, urine production falls. It's an orchestrated sequence. But here's what's really going on inside your body when stress disrupts that rhythm. If you work late under bright light, if you scroll intensely stimulating content before bed, if you argue, answer emails, or exercise vigorously too close to sleep, your brain interprets that as daytime alertness. Cortisol remains elevated, and elevated evening cortisol suppresses the very hormonal cascade that reduces nighttime urine production. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body has two operating modes, day mode and night mode. Day mode says, filter actively, move fluid, stay alert. Night mode says, conserve water, repair tissue, slow filtration. Cortisol keeps you in day mode. Even if the clock says 11 p.m., research in sleep endocrinology shows that individuals with elevated evening cortisol have fragmented sleep and altered nocturnal urine production patterns. This is particularly common in people with chronic stress, shift work exposure, or irregular sleep schedules. But there's more. Cortisol also affects blood sugar. Elevated cortisol can raise glucose overnight. That increases osmotic load in the kidneys, meaning more glucose filtration can draw more water into urine. So now we have a double effect: suppressed ADH signaling, increased glucose-related diuresis. The bladder becomes collateral damage. This is why some people say, I don't even drink much water at night, but I still wake up. The root cause isn't hydration. It's sympathetic nervous system activation. So what do? First, create a cortisol downshift ritual. 90 minutes before bed, dim lights. Shift from overhead lighting to warm low-level lamps. This supports melatonin signaling and indirectly supports ADH. Second, implement a nervous system transition. Breathing protocols work remarkably well. A simple 4-6 breathing pattern, inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. 5 minutes is often enough to measurably lower heart rate variability markers of stress. Third, avoid high-intensity exercise within 3 hours of sleep. Exercise is powerful for metabolic health, but timing matters. Late, intense training spikes cortisol and can increase nighttime awakenings. Fourth, consider magnesium glycinate in the evening. Magnesium supports GABAergic signaling and parasympathetic tone. It doesn't sedate you artificially. It supports physiological relaxation. And fifth, protect your sleep schedule. Consistent sleep and wake times train your hypothalamus to anticipate nighttime hormone patterns. When your brain trusts the schedule, ADH release becomes more predictable. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day, focusing on root cause physiology that empowers you to optimize naturally. Now we've addressed hormones and stress, but there's another factor almost no one talks about. It has nothing to do with what you drink. It has to do with gravity. Now let's talk about gravity, because this mechanism surprises almost everyone. You can perfectly time your water, you can stabilize insulin, you can calm cortisol, and you may still wake up at night. Why? Because fluid shifts when you lie down. Here's what's really going on inside your body. During the day, gravity pulls fluid downward. Small amounts of fluid naturally accumulate in your lower legs and ankles, especially if you sit for long periods. This is normal physiology. Even in healthy adults, measurable peripheral fluid pooling occurs after hours of upright posture. Now imagine that fluid as being temporarily stored in the tissues of your lower body. When you lie down at night, gravity is removed. That pooled fluid re-enters circulation. Your blood volume slightly increases. Your heart senses that increase. The kidneys respond by filtering more plasma. More filtration means more urine. This mechanism has been well documented in sleep medicine. Studies on nocturnal polyuria show that fluid redistribution from the lower extremities is a major contributor to nighttime urination, especially in sedentary individuals and older adults. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your legs like a sponge sitting at the bottom of a bucket all day. When you lay flat, you lift that sponge into the water. It releases fluid back into circulation. Your kidneys now have extra volume to process, and your bladder fills accordingly. This has nothing to do with how much you drank at dinner. It has to do with how much you moved during the day. So, what's the protocol? First, move your calf muscles. Your calves act as secondary hearts, pumping venous blood and fluid back toward your torso. If you sit for long hours, fluid stagnates. Every 60-90 minutes, stand up and walk for 2 to 3 minutes. Even simple calf raises make a difference. Second, consider a late afternoon walk. A 20-30 minute walk between 4 and 6 p.m. helps mobilize pooled fluid before bedtime. This gives your kidneys time to process it while you're still awake. Third, elevate your legs in the evening. For 20 minutes before dinner or while reading, elevate your legs slightly above heart level. This redistributes fluid earlier, reducing the nighttime surge. Fourth, evaluate sodium balance. If your sodium intake is extremely low, your body may retain fluid inappropriately during the day and then shift it at night. Balanced electrolytes help regulate fluid distribution more evenly. And fifth, resistance training matters. Strength training improves vascular tone and venous return. Over time, it reduces peripheral pooling and improves overall circulatory efficiency. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I break down these overlooked physiological mechanisms so you can solve problems at the root. Now here's something important. Hormones regulate urine production. Metabolism influences fluid retention. Stress alters signaling. Gravity redistributes volume. But there's one more layer most people overlook. Electrolytes. Now we arrive at one of the most misunderstood pieces of hydration physiology, electrolytes. Because water alone does not determine where fluid goes in your body, minerals do. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Water follows gradients. It moves toward areas of higher solute concentration, primarily sodium, potassium, and to a lesser degree, magnesium and glucose. If you drink large amounts of plain water without adequate electrolytes, you temporarily dilute plasma sodium concentration. Your kidneys respond by excreting that excess water to restore balance. The result? You urinate more. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your cells as houses and electrolytes as the door codes that allow water to enter. If the codes are correct, balanced sodium outside the cell, potassium inside, water distributes smoothly between compartments. If the codes are off, especially if sodium is too low, water stays in circulation briefly, then gets flushed. This is why endurance athletes who overconsume plain water without sodium can experience increased urination and even dangerous hyponatremia. But you don't need to be running a marathon to experience milder versions of this imbalance. Many people trying to be healthy drink excessive plain water all day, especially in the late afternoon, without mineral support. Then they wonder why they're up at night. What the research shows is that appropriate sodium intake supports plasma volume stability and reduces inappropriate diuresis. Potassium supports intracellular hydration. Magnesium helps regulate smooth muscle tone, including the bladder wall. So what's the practical protocol? First, hydrate earlier, with minerals. Add a pinch of high-quality sea salt or use a balanced electrolyte mix in your morning water, especially if you exercise, sweat, or follow a lower carbohydrate diet. Second, don't fear sodium unnecessarily. If you are metabolically healthy and not salt sensitive, moderate sodium intake supports hydration stability. Extremely low sodium diets can paradoxically increase hormonal stress responses like renin and aldosterone, destabilizing fluid regulation. Third, increase potassium-rich foods during the day. Leafy greens, avocados, lentils, squash. These improve intracellular hydration and support blood pressure regulation. Fourth, magnesium in the evening can be helpful. Magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate supports nervous system calm while also relaxing smooth muscle tissue, including the bladder. And fifth, avoid chugging. Large boluses of water overwhelm regulatory mechanisms. Sip steadily earlier in the day instead. Now let's step back. We've covered circadian ADH rhythm, insulin stability, cortisol regulation, fluid redistribution, electrolyte balance. There's one final piece that brings this all together: behavioral timing. Because even with perfect physiology, certain habits directly before bed can mechanically increase bladder activation. Now let's put everything together into a practical, testable hydration blueprint. Because physiology is powerful, but execution is what changes your sleep. Here's the mistake most people make. They think in terms of restriction. Drink less water. That's not the goal. The goal is alignment. Aligning fluid intake with circadian biology, metabolic stability, and fluid mechanics. So let me give you a simple, evidence-informed daily structure you can experiment with starting tomorrow. Morning, prime hydration. Within 30-60 minutes of waking, drink 12 to 16 ounces of water. Add a pinch of mineral salt or a balanced electrolyte mix if you sweat, exercise, or drink coffee. Why morning? Cortisol is naturally elevated. Your kidneys are active. Your body is prepared to filter efficiently. Front-loading hydration reduces rebound thirst later at night. Late morning to early afternoon, the hydration window consumes the majority, about 60-70% of your daily fluids before 3 p.m. Sip steadily. Avoid large boluses. If you exercise, hydrate immediately afterward, not hours later. This allows your kidneys to process excess fluid while you are upright and metabolically active. Mid-afternoon, fluid mobilization. Around 4 or 6 p.m., incorporate light movement, walk for 20 minutes, perform calf raises, elevate your legs for 10-20 minutes if you sit long hours. This redistributes pooled fluid before bedtime, not during sleep. Dinner, stabilize insulin. Finish dinner at least 3 hours before bed. Prioritize protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Reduce refined carbohydrates and alcohol in the evening. This stabilizes insulin and prevents delayed nocturnal diuresis. Evening, taper, don't deprive after dinner. Shift to small sips only if needed. Avoid large glasses of water within 2 to 3 hours of sleep. Dim lights 90 minutes before bed to support melatonin and ADH. Engage in calming routines to lower cortisol. Pre-bed, double voiding technique. This is simple and mechanical. Urinate once 30 minutes before bed, then again immediately before getting into bed. This ensures complete bladder emptying and reduces residual volume. And here's something subtle but powerful. If you wake once at night, avoid turning on bright lights. Keep stimulation minimal. This protects melatonin and helps you fall back asleep quickly. Now let's be realistic. If you are waking more than twice nightly consistently, or if nocturia is accompanied by excessive thirst, swelling, or changes in urination patterns, that warrants medical evaluation. Conditions like sleep apnea, diabetes, prostate enlargement, or bladder dysfunction can contribute. But for many people, the issue is circadian misalignment, not pathology. Test this blueprint for 7 days. Track fluid timing, dinner composition, movement, stress level, number of awakenings. Optimization requires observation, and when you align hydration with your biology, something remarkable happens. You stop fighting your bladder, your sleep deepens, your recovery improves, your metabolic hormones stabilize, your energy increases. Let's bring this together. Waking up at night to urinate is often treated like a minor inconvenience, or simply a consequence of aging. But now you can see the deeper picture. This isn't just about your bladder. It's about circadian rhythm. It's about insulin stability. It's about cortisol regulation. It's about gravity and vascular tone. It's about electrolytes and cellular hydration. Here's what's really going on inside your body. At night, your brain is designed to shift into conservation mode. ADH rises, urine production falls, cells repair, hormones recalibrate, fat oxidation increases, memory consolidates. When that system is disrupted by late hydration, unstable blood sugar, elevated evening stress, mineral imbalance, or fluid redistribution, your kidneys keep filtering as if it's daytime, and your bladder becomes the signal that something upstream needs adjustment. The empowering truth is this: most nighttime urination is not random, it's rhythmic, and rhythms can be retrained. When you front-load hydration earlier in the day, you reduce late-night kidney workload. When you stabilize insulin at dinner, you prevent delayed sodium and fluid swings. When you lower cortisol before bed, you allow ADH to rise naturally. When you move your body in the afternoon, you prevent nighttime fluid redistribution. When you balance electrolytes, you improve cellular hydration and reduce unnecessary diuresis. Small shifts, powerful downstream effects. And remember, the goal is not to restrict water. The goal is to align with biology. Because sleep is not passive. It is your most powerful metabolic reset button. Deep, uninterrupted sleep improves insulin sensitivity. It lowers inflammatory signaling. It enhances growth hormone release. It supports mitochondrial repair. It even influences appetite regulation the next day. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, implement just 3 changes. Drink 60-70% of your fluids before 3 p.m. Finish dinner 3 hours before bed and stabilize the macronutrients. Add 20 minutes of light movement in the late afternoon. Track how often you wake up. Let your body show you what alignment feels like. Optimization doesn't require extreme measures. It requires understanding. And once you understand the physiology, you stop guessing and start adjusting with precision. If this added value to your life, like the video and subscribe to join others optimizing their health naturally. Your biology is intelligent. Work with it, and your nights and your longevity will thank you.